You are now tuned in to the Rogers Podcast. Get ready to feel inspired, empowered, and to learn from our expert interviews. And now, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome back on the Rogers Podcast. And today we have someone who came all the way from the UK. So let's welcome Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome on the Rogers Podcast.
Thank you, Robin. It's great to be here. It's lovely to be in Mauritius again.
So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what exactly do you do?
First of all, I'm a husband to Helen and a father to two children. My daughter Phoebe's 21 and studying modern languages at university. My son is doing A-levels in the UK. So yeah, I set up my own business in 2020. The company's called Ylead, because I believe that leaders should lead from a purpose of why. This is why I lead and why others should follow me. And all of that has come from my experience of 27 years working for Barclays. And my connection with Mauritius is because I ran the Barclays retail business for 3 years between 2013 and 2016. So that's where my love of Mauritius and Mauritian people came from.
That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about what is gender equality or equity?
So yeah, I mean, I think that people sometimes confuse those two terms, and I prefer the term gender equity.
Okay.
It doesn't matter too much, but gender equality means, in my mind, treating everyone the same. And I don't think that's quite right. I think that men and women and non-binary people need different things. So that's why I talk about gender equity. Gender equity is not treating everyone the same, it's treating people fairly. So it's acknowledging that people have differences and taking account of those differences as we create opportunities for them in workplaces, at home, and in society. So it's fundamentally about treating people fairly.
Yeah, that's right. What inspired you for that and what motivated you to go into that direction? I mean, on this topic itself.
It's an important question because I think I get asked that quite often, and I think people understanding why this matters to people, I think, is almost the starting point. So in my corporate career, I always cared about female empowerment. I did recognise there were clearly differences between men and women. Simple things like women take time off for maternity leave, and clearly that has a disruption for their career in a way that it doesn't impact men. So there's lots of things that I could start to see and did my best to support female empowerment. But I realised about 2 years ago that I just didn't know nearly enough. And where my realisation came from is I had a conversation with a female colleague who said to me, well, I said to her, how can I be a better male ally? How can I be a better ally for women at the age of 52? And she said, read 2 books. And the 2 books she recommended were Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates, and the second one was Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. And they didn't just change my perspective, because I read them both cover to cover, they changed my life in the way I saw the world. And it gave me an appetite to read more, learn more by just reading books, listening to podcasts, talking to women. And with both of those books, I knew there were inequities. I just didn't realize the scale of it. The lived experiences that women and girls have every single day, and just the data biases that are skewed against women in a world designed by and for men. So it massively opened my eyes to the realities and therefore why change is needed.
What is gender allyship and why do we need it?
I used to think there was a missing ingredient. Even when I worked at Barclays, I was involved in lots of female talent programs, women in leadership programs, things designed to just close the gap. The simple fact, you look around, a starting point in organizations, you can very often have the same percentage of men and women at the beginning. Something happens as we move up the corporate chain and you get to the boardroom and senior levels, and the position is very skewed. And so there's something wrong there. So I saw lots of those programs taking place over the last 20 years to try to change things. But I think there was always one missing ingredient from those programs, and that's the involvement of men. And it's almost as though what we do with those things, we take women aside to one side and we try to fix women, and actually women don't need fixing, there's nothing really wrong with them. But it's the environment that needs fixing. We need to create an environment where men and women and all people can thrive and to feel that they belong and they're included. And so my initial thinking was there's something missing from those programs, and it's the involvement of men, which I still agree with. My thought now has become a bit more nuanced and a bit broader, that I think it's not just involving men, it's getting men and women working together to create an environment that is suitable for everyone. And it's not just involving men, it's getting men and women working together, understanding each other better, understanding each other's lived experiences, And that's what gender allyship is all about. It really is about people coming together to create an environment where everyone can thrive.
Yeah. So it's not just about men allyship, but it's more about women allyship as well.
Yeah.
So it's both of them working together.
Yeah.
And can you tell us how do we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's easy. No, it's not at all. I think there's a number of things that because I've researched this extensively and I've spoken to lots of people and I've spoken to lots of women to understand what do they need, but I've also spoken to lots of men to understand what holds them back from these conversations. And there's three main things I've identified that hold men back. One is a bit of apathy. They don't really think this concerns them. Is it not really for me? The second one is fear of saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And the third one is ignorance. So it's like, oh, I don't really understand the issues. So for me, the first thing that you need to do is to raise awareness, get people really understanding what the issues with gender equity are, how they impact women, how they impact men. So then people just have greater awareness of what's really going on. This is what happened to me. The next thing you do is you get people to accept that is the reality. There's something that happens everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I think you're in a position where you can motivate people to take action. And what we've identified through the work we've done is there's a number of traits that really good allies have, that allies kind of portray and live every day. And conveniently, they all start with C, so they're nice and easy to remember.
Okay.
And the first one is really curiosity, so it comes from that awareness thing. So to be curious about different people's lived experiences, not to assume that as a man, you know how it is for everyone else, or for a woman to know what it's like for other women. So I think curiosity about the issues, reading, watching, listening, and talking to women, I think is the first one. The next one is compassion. That's that you actually have empathy for other people's situation. You listen to them. You find out what's really, really going on, and you care for other people. But the difference between just care and compassion is care plus taking action on the back of it. You feel compelled to do something. So that's the second one. Then it gets a bit trickier because then you require courage. And courage is when you feel you really do stand up for what you believe in. You call out bad behavior when you see it.
Yeah.
You have challenging conversations. You work hard to create trust and psychological safety around you. And you show your own vulnerabilities because we all have them, but we very often feel we have to hide those. And then you've got collaborations. That's how you work together more effectively with different people. And then finally, commitment is about seeing this through for the long term, because you cannot just be an ally for the summer.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lifetime commitment to keep learning and listening and making basically the world a better place. So in the work we do, we help organizations to embrace those traits and then to start to live them over time. And that's really how you create allyship, but it does take time. It's not a training program. It's something that needs to be a commitment to creating a different culture in the workplace.
Okay. Earlier you were talking about enrolling men together. So how do we enroll men as well? I mean, we talk about gender equity, both of them have to be on the same level in a way, but how can men themselves be involved? Yeah.
That's the key question that I continue to work on. And I do have the answers, but that is, if we can crack that, that's when I think we'll go on the path to gender equity. I remember I did a talk for a big company in the UK for International Women's Day, and it was on male allyship. And in the audience, there's about 90 people, of which I counted 5 men, and 3 of them were employees of this company. So as I was talking about this, not surprisingly, as I was talking about the things men need to do to create better equity, all the women were agreeing with me. And I, much as that was useful and enjoyable, I realized that that's not my audience. It's actually, how do you enroll men? And I think for too many years, we have kept men out of these conversations. It's like, well, no, this isn't for you. Allow the women to sort it out. And that's the nonsense if you think about it. Men are in the positions, in the majority of the positions of power and influence. So if you want to create change, you've got to enroll them. You've got to create safe spaces for them to explore a topic, which can be difficult. It's really important you explain to men that this isn't just you generously giving to women. You know, it's not a zero-sum game. When it's proven through research that when you raise opportunities for a disadvantaged group, it raises opportunities for everyone. You think about something, a really simple example, think about disability. Now that we do have, 30 odd years ago perhaps didn't have, but now we do have accessible routes for people, whether it's lifts or ramps, so people with disabilities can find it easier to access buildings. Well, that doesn't just benefit people with disabilities. It benefits anyone who wants perhaps easier access to a building, doesn't want to walk up a long flight of stairs. It benefits everyone when we create these opportunities. It's exactly the same for gender equity. If you think about fatherhood, and so if we create more flexible working for women so that they can juggle the complicated lives they have, particularly if they have children, that benefits men too. But we have to make it societally acceptable for men to access those opportunities when they're there. So I think it's really about explaining to men how they can benefit too, but creating a safe space where they can explore a topic. They can say some things that perhaps may not be acceptable. That's okay, because you're learning. Yeah. And people should be allowed to make mistakes. And very often I think people, I just don't want to go there. Yeah. So for me, it's about creating an environment where men and women can learn and share together and move forward together.
That's easy to say, but what is the main challenge? Why men are not involved?
I think a lot of it's due to history. I say for many years, men weren't involved in these conversations, and it's all been about what we can do for women. There's a bit of a change now. We do have International Men's Day, November the 19th. Today I've posted about it on LinkedIn to raise some awareness of some of the issues that impact men. So I think we haven't really involved men historically before, but I think the biggest barrier is men just don't understand the issues and how it affects their mothers, their daughters, their wives, their partners, their friends, their colleagues. They just don't understand because they haven't read about it, they haven't heard about it, women haven't perhaps shared it with them. And so we have to open that up and raise awareness of men about what are the issues that affect women, and therefore how we can work together to make it easier for them to live full and rich lives. And the flip side will happen as well. Men are held back from many, many things. I mean, one of the things that I often talk about is men find it hard to express their emotions and to show their vulnerability. We're expected to be kind of strong and stoic and confident all the time. It's ridiculous. We're not like that as small boys. So at what point are we now, when we have to stop showing our emotions? So it's creating an environment where men can realise this is beneficial for them as well. It genuinely is. Everyone will thrive if we have gender equity. There's an analogy I often share, which it's not mine, I wish I could say it was, but it was from Mary McAleese, the former Irish Prime Minister. And she talks about the way the world works is like a bird with one wing. And she says it flaps around rather sadly without having true elevation or direction or balance, because we rely overly on the masculine wing. And if we could actually just allow the female wing to kind of flourish and to have the same opportunities as men, allow female talents and creativity to flourish, then the world would flourish and men would flourish and we'd all benefit. So for me, it's realizing that this is something for all of us. It's not men versus women, it's men and women working together to create a fairer society and workplaces and home life. Yeah.
I remember one of the conversations we had previously where we gave this example of big boys don't cry.
Yeah,
you remember that? Yeah. So I think it's ever since we were young, and then we were told big boys cannot cry. You're not allowed to cry. So will that be one of the reasons why we are as men? We're both men. We are stuck up not to be able to show that kind of vulnerability.
100%. So I can remember at the age of 10. When I went to kind of hug my dad, he said to me, "Oh no, we shake hands now." And I remember him said to me when he used to try and suppress me from crying when I was kind of younger. So I didn't for many, many years, and I still find it quite hard to express my emotions through tears. It's just the way it is. I remember when my son was about 8, and I was in the UK at the time, and I used to go away on business overnight a few times. And I remember saying to him, "Right, Toby, I'm away for a couple of nights. You're the man of the house now, so look after the girls." And and it's ridiculous. So he's 8. He's got an older sister who's 12. She's far more capable of looking after everyone and keeping them all alive than Toby is. He can barely tie his shoelaces, and yet I'm saying to him, "You're the default leader." So I was guilty of it as well. This gender stereotyping that we do. And from a very early age, girls are taught to be compliant and agreeable and sweet and kind, and boys are taught to be assertive and, confident and express themselves and, in the right way. And it's social conditioning that is just not necessary. And it's, as I think the world evolves, people are now breaking away from some of those stereotypes, but they still hold too many of us back. So I think creating an environment where people can express themselves freely, embrace both sides. We all have masculine and feminine traits that we can access. And we just need to access them in more balance, both individuals, but also within workplaces, and particularly when it comes to leadership. Leadership is too reliant on masculine traits like strength and discipline and assertiveness, and is not reliant enough on things like compassion and vulnerability and humility and caring for people and nurturing. So we just need more balance across those things as well. And start with the kids. Don't tell the kids they fit into a particular box. Let them be and let them express themselves freely. Let boys cry.
So what do you see when you talk about balancing it? So how do you see it in a workplace?
Well, I think the one thing I would say is you need to create an environment where everyone feels included and people feel safe to express themselves. I often talk about psychological safety. And psychological safety is basically the concept that says it's okay to admit to a mistake, it's okay to speak up, to challenge people who are more senior than you. It's, to express it. Because if you can do that, what you're doing is getting all the information you need around the organization, and people feel that they can contribute their thoughts and ideas. And it's been proven by research to be the #1 factor that creates high-performance organizations. Google, which is quite a high-performing organization, did a 2-year study of what creates high performance, and they found the #1 factor that was prevalent in all their high-performing teams was psychological safety. So it's, first of all, you've got to create an environment where people can express themselves. But you've got to make it okay for people to kind of be vulnerable and to admit to mistakes and to be humble. And compassion is as important as assertiveness. And just recognize that people are different.
Yeah. Honestly speaking, this is just talk, what we're doing right now. We're just saying words. But how is it in action? How is it done in practical life?
One of the core things I always talk about when I talk about this stuff with leaders in different organizations is that it's about taking action. It's not about the words. So I think that the first thing, if people genuinely want to become an ally, is to educate yourself, start to learn. Men, talk to women, find out what their experience is really like, and listen generously. I mean, we do have a tendency to talk more than we listen, and I say that's men and women generally, but I think in this situation, men have got to remember they've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so it's very important that they listen to what women's true experiences are. So I think that initial curiosity is key, but start to notice things that, based on your education, that are happening in the workplace, and call them out. So if you see a situation where someone says something that's inappropriate or non-inclusive or sexist, just say, I'm not sure we should really be saying that kind of thing in this workplace, or could you just say that again so that you can bring it out there and call it out. And because that way, you're really standing up for what you believe in. So the key thing is that it is about actions, not about words. As a leader, if you say, I really care about gender equity, and then do nothing to promote it, nothing to create it, then it's emptiness. So it is about action. If you really do care about gender equity, the first thing I'd say is just understand what your current reality is. I don't just mean things like the gender pay gap, which most organizations will have some form of gender pay gap, because that's very historic, but it does need to be fixed. And I'm not just talking about representation of women, because whilst it's good to have targets set for how many women you have in senior positions, that's going to take time to build, and you still need to build a pipeline. I would start with saying, what is it actually like for women in the workplace? What's their experience compared to men, and get some real honest feedback, and then work to change that. Work to create an environment where women don't come to work and get harassed, for example, which still is very prevalent in the workplace and society, where women can feel that their voices are listened to, and they are heard, and they are valued in the same way that men are, where women don't have to worry about the impacts on their careers of having children. Because if women don't have children, we don't have a population anymore. So it's pretty important they do, but women should have the same opportunity to manage their careers alongside that as men do. So I think it's taking a longer term view of this, because we won't change it overnight. If you look at the research, it says that the World Economic Forum says we're 136 years away from gender equity based on our current rate of progress. The UN says it's nearly 300 years. So we're miles away. So we have to do some things differently. So take a longer term view of where you want to get to as an organization, but then start to take action now. Start to learn, start to have forums where people discuss this kind of thing, create safe spaces for people to learn, and work towards the targets you've set for what it's going to be like for men and women in the workplace to have the same access to opportunities and the same ability to express themselves freely.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about forums, creating forums. How was your experience of creating forums for people, like to get men involved and women were involved as well?
So I've been doing some work on the island over the last few months, and we ran a workshop last week, and it was absolutely brilliant because we got about 90 people in a room, and it's 2/3 men and 1/3 women, and that kind of represents the balance of where we need allyship to come from, and the ratio of men and women in senior positions. Mm-hmm. So by creating an environment where people can learn together, to share ideas, to challenge each other, to get support from each other, I've been really delighted with the response. So I believe in inclusive forums. I think there's nothing wrong with having forums for women where they can talk with other women and express themselves and have safe spaces to talk about things that they may feel more comfortable talking to women about. And I think we ought to do the same for men, because men don't have enough of those things. And men, because they find it harder to kind of talk about their emotions and their feelings, and creating those safe spaces is really important. But there is no substitute for bringing everyone together to learn from each other. And so my experience of doing that has been phenomenal. It's gone better than I would have hoped. And the more we can do that, the better. Just learn together in a way that's not judgmental. The fact that I learnt at the age of 52 that there was a whole bunch of stuff I didn't know is fine. Yeah. It's not as though you get full of learning when you're a kid. There's a great capacity to keep learning. And I see that as a great opportunity to keep learning for me, rather than thinking, I got it wrong for over 50 years. Yeah. It's fine. There's a lovely quote I always think from Maya Angelou, who was a US civil rights activist. And she always says, do the best you can until you know better. But when you know better, do better. And that's kind of that's what I'm trying to do with this. I did the best I could until I knew better. But I do now know better. So I'm committed to doing better.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. How does the future look like for you in terms of focusing on educational change?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it quite a bit, because now over the last 18 months, I've been educating myself, and over the last 9 months, I've been starting to use that education to share what I've learned with others and to enroll people. And I still feel there's a lot that I'm learning and a lot needs to be done there. But what I'm being thoughtful about is how to raise awareness at scale, how to get more people enrolled in this stuff. So one of the things that I do is every Wednesday I post on LinkedIn about gender equity, and that's something that goes out. It's gone out a little while ago, and I talk about it there to raise awareness, because I've got a growing following. But I think that's a great way to connect with people and to share ideas. And you can always get some contrary views. Sometimes people come on and they troll me, and that's absolutely fine. I don't mind that. But generally, what it's doing is I'm learning and we're learning together. Mm-hmm. Doing things like this, I think, is great. It's good to have these kind of conversations where you kind of share what your thoughts are. And I want to work with more organizations that are genuinely committed to this. And I don't mean those organizations that think, oh, we need to do something because there's a finance bill or because people are talking about it. Those that actually genuinely care. So they understand the benefits, but they also feel it in their heart as well. There's a real commitment. And they've actually got the courage and the drive to do something about it. So I always say it takes head, heart, and guts to really do this. So I'm going to keep talking about it and sharing what I'm learning, and I'm learning all the time. And I think the more we can do things like this that get messages out to people, the better. But I really want to appeal to both men and women. So for women, it's there are men out there who are on your side and are keen to learn. So enroll us, get us involved in this. And for men, this isn't a scary space. It's a great opportunity to learn and actually to be part of the change that you want to see in the world, creating a fairer, more inclusive environment for you, for your friends, for your family. It's a great opportunity I think we all have.
All right, awesome. Before we wrap up this episode, is there any short of insight would you like to give to the Rogers community?
There's probably two things. The first thing I would say is when you hear about gender equity or allyship or equality, is just remember this isn't just for women. Yeah. This is about how it can benefit everyone, genuinely. So that's the first thing. This is something where everyone should be involved in it. The second thing I'd then say is go out and educate yourself. If anyone wants any hints or tips from me, just message me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to kind of share stuff that I'm learning and just share examples of books and podcasts. I mean, this is a good example. TED Talks, anything that I've kind of accessed that I think would be beneficial for people. And if you're a man, speak to women. You know, find out really what their lived experience is like, because you'll probably find it's quite revelatory. The things that we don't appreciate as men, we don't have to think about, we don't have to go through, you'd be amazed at the different thought processes that women have to go through, sometimes just to be safe. And so the main message would be curious, go out and learn about this because it does benefit everyone.
So can you tell us a little bit on how to connect with you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So just my name, Jeremy Stockdale. My email is jeremy@ylead, ylead.co.uk. And those are probably the two best methods. So I would love to get people's feedback, whether it's through email or LinkedIn. And hope to see more Rogers people again in the future.
Jeremy, thank you very much for joining us on the Rogers podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Robin. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for joining us on the Rogers podcast. I hope you gained some useful insight. If you'd like to know more about us, you can email us and you can like our posts on Facebook or on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and I'll see you very soon.